Look at your lawn for a moment and count the mounds. There is one beside the driveway, two along the fence, another sitting right in the middle of the yard, where the paddling pool was supposed to go this weekend, and three more crowding the edge of the patio that were simply not there a week ago. You have been stepping over them, walking around them, and maybe running the mower straight across the top of them, while hoping that will settle the matter. It will not, because every single time the blade passes over a mound, two things happen at once. The blade scalps the raised soil and leaves a bare brown scar in the turf, and the colony rebuilds that mound within 2 days, often larger than it was before. You have probably reached for the contact killer spray, the kind that promises instant results, and for about 20 minutes it delivers. Every ant the spray touches curls up and dies, and it feels wonderful. Then the next morning arrives, and the hill is busy again, because all you killed were the workers on the surface. You never touched the colony, you never touched the queen. You only removed a few thousand employees, and the queen replaced them overnight. Today I am going to show you a simple powder that does something no spray, no bait, and no poison can manage. It collapses the entire mound from the inside, every ant in the nest, right down to the queen herself. And here is the part that is going to sound impossible. Once the colony is gone and the mound flattens, the grass in that spot does not merely recover. It returns thicker and greener than the lawn around it. One inexpensive product, two opposite results: kill the whole colony and feed the turf at the same time. I understand how that sounds. This is the 6th explanation in an ongoing series about cheap lawn fixes, and each one has carried a claim that felt too good to be believed. And each time the answer turned out to be ordinary chemistry rather than magic. This is chemistry as well, and before the end of this video you will understand exactly why it works, exactly how to apply it, and exactly why a pest company will charge you $200 for a result you can achieve for around 4. If this is the kind of practical lawn knowledge you want more of, subscribe now so the next method lands in front of you, and leave a comment telling me how many ant mounds you can count in your lawn today, and what kind of ants they are, whether they are ordinary black ants, fire ants, or something you cannot identify yet, because your answers help me decide which pest to cover next. Before I name the powder, I need to explain why ant mounds are a far bigger problem than they appear. Most people file them under cosmetic damage, small ugly heaps of dirt that spoil the look of an otherwise tidy lawn. They are not simply unsightly. They are actively pulling your lawn apart. And if the residents happen to be fire ants, they are genuinely dangerous. Here is what is taking place beneath the surface while the colony grows. The ants are mining soil out of the root zone, carving tunnels and chambers, and carrying that loose dirt upward to pile it on top. That pile is the mound, and it is made of the very soil that used to surround your grass roots. Directly under the mound, those roots are now dangling in hollow air pockets rather than sitting snug in firm earth. Roots that lose contact with soil cannot draw up water or nutrients, so the grass over the nest slowly starves. At the same time, the mound on the surface is smothering the blades beneath it, cutting off sunlight and airflow, and creating a dead circle that widens as the population climbs. Then the mower arrives, dips into the raised soil, and shaves the grass down to bare dirt, opening a brown wound that needs weeks to close. A single mound will not wreck a lawn, but 5, 10, or 20 of them turn the whole yard into a patchwork of scars and dirt heaps, with fresh ones appearing every week. When the colony is made of fire ants, the stakes rise sharply. Fire ants are aggressive by nature. They boil out of the mound the instant it is disturbed, and their stings are severe, really hurt. For a small child or a curious pet, brushing against a fire ant mound can mean dozens of stings in a matter of seconds, and some people react badly enough to need medical care. This stopped being only a lawn problem some time ago. It is a safety problem, and it is unfolding in the yard right now. So let me finally introduce the powder. Not quite yet, because there is one idea I have to set in place first. One property that separates this material from every other ant killer on the shelf. And it is the very reason the pest control trade would rather you never heard about it. Almost every commercial ant product works through chemistry. The sprays rely on pyrethroids, the baits carry hydromethylnin or fipronil, and the granules are built around bifenthrin. Each of these is a synthetic compound that poisons the insect through contact or through eating it. They do work, but they also harm helpful insects. They linger as residue in the soil. Several of them carry restrictions near ponds and streams. And over the years, ants can grow resistant, which pushes manufacturers toward ever stronger blends. The powder I am about to describe does not poison anything at all. It works by physical action, by mechanical damage, through a process the ants can never adapt to, because it does not attack their biology. It attacks their anatomy, and that single difference changes everything. If you have followed this series from the start, the pattern will already be familiar. The first covered baking soda for correcting soil that had drifted too acidic. The second used iron sulfate to burn out broadleaf weeds. The third repaired brown patches with a mix of soap and molasses. The fourth stopped new weeds from sprouting using corn gluten meal. The fifth turned pale yellow grass a deep green with Epsom salt. This is the sixth, and it may be the most satisfying of them all, because there are few things in lawn care more rewarding than watching a stubborn mound go quiet. The powder is called diatomaceous earth, often shortened to the letters DE, and sometimes sold under the name fossil shell flour. It is a fine, chalky, off-white powder made from the fossilized skeletons of diatoms. Diatoms were microscopic algae that drifted through ancient seas and lakes millions of years ago, and each one built itself a tiny shell out of silica. As countless generations died, those glassy shells settled and piled up on the seafloor into thick deposits, and those deposits are what we mine, grind, and bag as diatomaceous earth today. You can buy it at almost any garden center, most hardware stores, and countless online sellers. A 4-pound bag usually costs somewhere between $4 and $8, and that one bag is enough to deal with every mound in an average yard for a full season. Now here is how it actually kills an ant, and this is the part I find genuinely fascinating, because it is so elegantly simple. Placed under a microscope, diatomaceous earth does not resemble soft powder at all. It looks like a field of shattered glass, millions of microscopic shells edged with razor-sharp points, edges far too small for the human eye to notice, yet ruinous to something the size of an insect. When an ant walks across the powder, those particles cling to its exoskeleton, and the sharp edges score and slice through the waxy cuticle, the thin protective film that coats the body of every insect. That cuticle is what seals moisture inside the ant. It is, in effect, the creature's waterproof coat. Once it is cut, the ant begins leaking water, not in a sudden gush but in a slow and steady loss. Across roughly 24 to 48 hours, the ant dries out. It cannot patch the microscopic scratches. It cannot take on water fast enough to keep pace. And eventually it dies, not from poison, not from any chemical reaction, but from simple dehydration. The powder quite literally dries the insect out from the outside inward. And here is the detail that makes it so powerful. The ant does not die on the spot. It strolls through the dust, gathers particles on its body, and carries them straight back down into the nest. It bumps against its nest mates. It shares food mouth to mouth in the behavior known as trophallaxis. And it grooms and is groomed. And with every one of those contacts, the powder transfers onto another body. It reaches the nurses, it reaches the brood, and eventually it reaches the queen. The dust travels through the colony like a slow-motion wave, worker to worker, worker to queen, worker to larvae. And over 3 to 7 days the whole nest dehydrates from within, the queen included. No spray can pull that off. A spray only kills what its droplets physically land on, and that is always the surface. While the queen sits deep underground behind walls of workers, in chambers, no droplet will ever reach. Bait does better but still falls short, because bait depends on workers hauling poison home. And some colonies are cautious enough to feed strange food to a few disposable workers first. If those testers sicken and die, the colony rejects the bait entirely, and the plan fails. Diatomaceous earth slips past all of these defenses. It is not food, it carries no scent, it is not a chemical the ants can taste or recognize. It is simply a physical dust that sticks to anything brushing against it. The ants cannot test it, they cannot avoid it, and they can never build resistance to it, because nothing alive becomes immune to being cut by glass. It is the most elegant pest control I have ever come across, and it costs about $4. Now let me explain the second half of the story, the half that sounds too strange to be real, the reason the grass returns thicker than before. Diatomaceous earth is roughly 85% silica, which is silicon dioxide, and silica is a genuinely useful mineral for plants, grasses very much included. As the powder slowly breaks down into the soil, it releases silica in a form the plant can actually take up. And that silica does several helpful things for turf. First, it reinforces the cell walls inside the grass blade, making each blade physically tougher and more upright, and more able to shrug off wear from footsteps, mowing, and heat. Second, it improves the plant ability to handle drought, helping the grass hold moisture in its tissues and lose less through its leaves, so that during a fierce July heat wave, the treated grass stays green noticeably longer than untreated grass beside it. Third, and this is the effect that surprised me most, silica encourages tillering. Tillering is the process where a single grass plant pushes out side shoots and grows new blades from the same set of roots. More tillers means more blades from each plant, and more blades from each plant means a thicker, denser lawn. Trials from the University of Florida and from several turf grass institutes across Asia have measured real gains in grass density when silica is added to the soil. It is not a loud, overnight change like a heavy dose of nitrogen. It is quiet and gradual, but it is real and it builds, because every application adds a little more silica, and the benefit accumulates season after season. So here is the sequence you can expect after treating a mound. In the first week, the ants die and the colony collapses, and the mound stops growing. In the second week, rain and watering start rinsing the powder down into the soil, where the silica begins mixing into the root zone. Across the third and fourth weeks, the abandoned mound settles and flattens, since no ants remain to keep rebuilding it, and grass starts creeping back into the patch that was smothered. From the fourth to the eighth week, the returning grass, now rooted in silica-enriched soil, tillers more eagerly than the lawn around it. So the bare spot does not just fill, it fills in denser than before. By the third month, the place where the mound once stood is very often the greenest, thickest patch in the entire lawn. Not because you pampered it, but because one cheap powder killed the pest and fed the grass in the same motion. One product, two effects, kill and feed. And that is exactly why this kind of lawn chemistry is so satisfying. Now let me walk you through applying it correctly, because technique matters. The first method is direct mound treatment, and it is meant for mounds you can clearly see. Measure out about 1 cup of diatomaceous earth, and sprinkle it evenly across the top of the mound, until the whole surface wears a thin, visible coat of white. Then take a stick or a long screwdriver and drive 4 or 5 holes down into the mound, each roughly 2 to 3 inches deep, and shake a little more powder down into each hole. Those holes do 2 jobs. They carry the dust into the upper chambers where the workers are busiest, and they irritate the colony so that ants rush out through the powder while trying to repair the damage. Do not stamp on the mound or kick it apart. You want it left standing, because an intact mound keeps the ants at home, walking through the dust again and again, and dragging it deeper with every trip. The second method is a perimeter barrier, and it is about prevention. Lay a continuous line of diatomaceous earth around the edges of your yard, along the fences, against the foundation of the house, around the borders of the patio and the driveway, anywhere ants might cross from untreated ground into your lawn. That line becomes a barrier the incoming ants have to walk through, so they collect particles on the way in and carry the dust home. And the colony can die, even though you never located or treated the nest itself. The third method is broadcast application, and this is the heavy option reserved for lawns that are badly overrun. Load a broadcast spreader and scatter diatomaceous earth across the whole lawn, at a rate of about 2 pounds for every 1,000 square feet. That is only a light dusting, and it disappears from view once it filters down into the base of the grass. Water it in gently to settle it onto the soil surface. This single pass treats every nest in the lawn at once, including the ones you never spotted, the underground colonies that have not yet raised a visible mound, and the young satellite nests just getting started. Because the rate is so low, that amount of powder is far too little to trouble the grass, yet it is more than enough to wear down any ant that keeps crossing it. Now here are the rules that keep this safe and effective, and none of them are optional. Rule 1, and this is the most important of all, use food-grade diatomaceous earth and never the pool-grade product. Pool-grade material has been heat-treated, a process that converts much of it into crystalline silica, which is genuinely hazardous to breathe. Food-grade diatomaceous earth is made of amorphous silica, which is the safe form. The bag must clearly say food-grade, and if it does not carry those words plainly, leave it on the shelf. Rule 2. Apply it dry. This powder only works while it is dry. The moment it gets wet, the particles clump together, and those cutting edges can no longer reach an ant cuticle. Choose a dry day with no rain expected for at least the next 24 hours, and if rain does catch it, wait for the ground to dry and simply apply again. Rule 3. Wear a dust mask while you spread it. Even the food-grade form can irritate your airways if you breathe in a cloud of the fine dust, so a basic paper dust mask is enough to keep you comfortable. Once the powder has settled into the grass and soil, there is no longer anything to inhale. Rule 4. Keep pets off the treated ground until the dust has settled in, which usually takes about an hour. After that, it is completely safe around dogs and cats. In fact, food-grade diatomaceous earth is sometimes mixed into animal feed as a natural deworming agent, so it is remarkably gentle once it is no longer floating in the air. Rule 5. Be patient. This is not a spray and it will not drop ants in front of your eyes. Reckon on 24 to 48 hours for individual ants, and 3 to 7 days for a whole colony to fall silent. If you check the mound the next morning and still see traffic, that is completely normal. Look again around the 5th day, and that is when the difference will be obvious. Let me tell you how this played out in my own yard. Last June, I counted 11 mounds across my back lawn, 11 of them, and 3 were fire ant mounds clustered in the south corner, while the rest were ordinary ant hills spread over the grass. I treated all 11 on a single Saturday morning, a cup of powder over each mound, holes driven in with a screwdriver, extra powder tipped into the holes, and then a perimeter line laid along the fence. On day 1, it was business as usual, ants everywhere. By day 3, the activity had clearly dropped on 7 of the 11 mounds, fewer ants on the surface and thinner trails leading away. By day 5, 9 of the 11 showed no surface movement at all, though the 2 fire ant mounds in the corner were still going, if much reduced. By day 7, every one of the 11 had fallen silent, not a single ant in view. And when I pushed a stick into one of them, nothing came out, because the colony was simply gone. I gave the 2 stubborn fire ant mounds a second dose to be certain, and within 3 more days, those were finished as well. 2 weeks after that, I noticed something I had not expected. The grass ringing the dead mounds was bouncing back faster than I thought it would, and it was not only recovering, it was visibly thicker and a darker green than the grass a few feet away. I assumed I was imagining it, so I actually measured. I pressed a ruler down into the turf where a mound had been and counted the blades in a square inch, then did the same in an untouched patch nearby, and the former mound area carried about 30% more blades in that square inch, 30% thicker, in only 2 weeks. I cannot prove beyond doubt that the powder alone caused that jump. It might be the grass rushing to fill open ground. It might be nutrients released by the decomposing colony. It might be the silica, and it is most likely some blend of all 3. But I can tell you what my eyes saw. And what they saw was the finest grass in the whole yard growing precisely where the worst mounds had stood. The total cost of clearing all 11 mounds came to roughly $3 of powder out of a bag I had paid $6 for. Set that against a professional visit, where a single ant treatment runs anywhere from $100 to $250 depending on your region and the number of mounds, and where the technician applies synthetic chemicals that may keep pets and children off the lawn for hours or even days. $3, no synthetic chemicals, no keep-off warnings, no lingering residue and grass that comes back thicker. Before we go on, this is the point in the video where I will remind you just once more. If any of this is proving useful, please subscribe, because this series is being assembled piece by piece into a complete lawn and pest care system, and every method connects to the ones around it. Now let me answer the questions I already know are on the way. Does it work on fire ants? Yes, it does. Fire ants are vulnerable to the very same cutting and drying action, but their colonies are larger, and their tunnels run deeper than those of common ants, so they may need 7 to 10 days rather than 3 to 5, and you may have to treat the mound a second time after the first week. Yet the mechanism is identical. Cut the cuticle, dry out the ant and bring down the colony. Does it work on carpenter ants? Only partly. Carpenter ants nest inside wood rather than in soil, so powder scattered on the lawn will never reach the ones tunneling through your deck or your house framing. To deal with carpenter ants, you must apply the powder straight into the wood where they are living, and that really is a subject for another day. Does it kill earthworms? This is the question I am asked most, and the answer is no, not at the light rates used for ant control. Earthworms live down in moist soil below the surface, while this powder only does its work on dry surfaces. So by the time any of it filters down to worm depth, it is damp and harmless, its edges blunted by moisture. Your worms are safe. Does it kill bees? Not when it is applied to mounds and soil, because bees do not walk across the ground, they fly. And this powder only affects insects that physically travel through it. That said, do not dust it onto flowers or blooming plants where bees are busy feeding, because if it coats the petals and a bee crawls across them, it certainly could be harmed. And what about the helpful insects living in the lawn? At the low rates recommended here, the effect on beneficial ground-dwelling insects stays small, because you are treating particular mounds and specific borders rather than blanketing your entire property. And that targeted approach is the whole point. How often will you need to reapply? For an existing mound, 1 or 2 treatments is usually all it takes to end the colony. For a perimeter barrier, refresh the line every 2 to 3 weeks, and always after heavy rain, because that barrier is a preventive measure rather than a cure, so it only keeps working if you keep it topped up through the active season. Here is a full ant management calendar you can follow across the year. In early spring, through March and April, lay down a perimeter barrier around the yard the moment you spot the first ant activity, which discourages new colonies from settling in. In late spring, through May and June, treat any mounds that appear using the direct method, a cup of powder, a few holes and more powder in the holes. Through the summer, in July and August, you are at the peak of the season, so keep the perimeter barrier maintained and treat any fresh mound within about 48 hours of noticing it, because the sooner you strike, the smaller the colony and the faster it falls. In autumn, through September and October, give the perimeter one final treatment before the ants go dormant, which mops up any late colonies trying to establish. Across a whole year, that adds up to something like $12 to $15 of powder for a lawn that stays free of ants. Compare that with a quarterly pest control contract. 4 visits a year at around $150 to $200 each, which lands somewhere between $600 and $800 annually for synthetic chemicals doing the same job as your $12 bag of fossilized algae. I want to leave you with one idea that crosses my mind every time I put one of these videos together. The lawn care and pest control industries have spent decades teaching a single story. The story that keeping a yard is complicated, that it demands professionals, that it needs costly products, and that you could not possibly manage it yourself. For certain jobs, that story is fair enough. Removing a large tree, reshaping the grade of a property, repairing structural damage from pests, those genuinely call for experts. But ant mounds, weeds, yellow grass and brown patches are not in that category. They are simple problems with simple answers. Answers that cost around $4 instead of $400. Answers built on food-grade minerals rather than synthetic chemicals. Answers that anyone holding a measuring cup and 10 spare minutes can carry out. You do not need a pest control subscription. You need a bag of diatomaceous earth and the understanding of how to use it, and now you have both. If you want to keep building this system with me, subscribe so you do not miss the next piece. Share this video with another gardener or neighbor who is fighting the same mounds, and leave a comment telling me how many mounds you are dealing with and what kind of ants they are. Or come back in 2 weeks and tell me what happened when you tried it. Because the comment section under these videos is quietly turning into one of the most honest lawn care resources anywhere. Real people, real lawns, and real results.